Now, former ANC spokesperson Zizi Kodwa has denied that he is corrupt. He insists payments from former EOH executive Johan McKay were as a result of their friendship. Kodwa allegedly received payments for luxury travel and accommodation from McKay. He says he was facing financial difficulties at the time. Kodwa is appearing today before the state capture inquiry. My colleague, that's eNCA reporter Khayelihle Khumalo, following the proceedings for us, joining us now in the Midday View studio live here. Kaya, good afternoon, welcome. Thank you very much for coming in. Tell us more on Zizi Kodwa denying that he has anything or there was anything suspicious about the payments he received from former EOH executive Johan McKay.
Well, that's right, Brad, and at least that's a statement that he has presented. So it's become a tradition for all witnesses when they come before the inquiry to have an opening statement. And he stated categorically from the outset that really the host of allegations, so something that was quite unprecedented because from time to time a lot of witnesses always deny. But Mr. Kodwa said, look, I got this 1 million rand, for example, but now the question is, he said he was facing financial difficulties. But Bredan, lo and behold, Mr. Kodwa said he used that amount of cash to buy an SUV. So that was a primary question from the side of the inquiry, that if you are really facing a financial situation that is not ideal, why did you use so much money just to buy a vehicle? You are supposed to attend to the pressing basic needs. But Mr. Kodwa said, look, he really needed this cash. But also stating that in terms of some of the benefits, for example, in Cape Town, he spent a lot of night in Mr. McKay's house, and in one instance, so they had to pay about 250,000 rand for Mr. Kodwa and for the chef as well. So also a lot of expenditure that went into this regard. But Bredan, this is what he had to say.
As I stated, Deputy Chief Justice, I did not come before you to pull wool over your eyes or deny that I often received payments from a friend identified in the questions sent to me by the Secretariat of the Commission. I came to assure you that such payments were indeed financial help from a friend. And yes, they sometimes involve figures that seem high. However, I assure you that it was due to my financial difficulties and sometimes need for accommodation as I traveled. And none of the payments or catering accommodation were offered to me to facilitate any unlawful act or my part.
So, Mr. Zizi Kodwa, they're denying he's corrupt, but what about his admission that there could be an error of judgment?
Well, that's right, Bredan. So the context around there was the proximity of some of the ANC leaders, especially to the business people at times, where the party from time to time will solicit donations. So that's where it came from. And also, in his statement as well, Bredan, he stated that, you know, the issue around perceptions and politics, they're very important. So the issue around corruption as well, but also admiring the tenacity of the chairperson of the inquiry, given the very magnitude of the task that he's facing. But also speaking about that issue of saying that he's not corrupt. So this was primarily based on friendship that he had with Mr. McKay. But also now there was another very key question from the evidence leader, where he said at some point the ANC PGC in the Eastern Cape actually got over a certain amount of donation from Mr. McKay, but also talking about that proximity of business leaders to the governing party. So they would pay certain leaders with an expectation that they'll be getting the tenders. But of course, Mr. Kodwa saying he was not part of the government, he was just a spokesperson of the ANC. Of course, he was the face of the party at the time.
Yeah, and he knows so many people who were in government as the spokesperson of the party and a member of the National Executive Committee. Is he done now? Is he completed his testimony?
So he's coming back once again to also look at the deluge of payments that he received from Mr. McKay, but also luxury accommodations that he received, but once again defending himself, saying, look, I mean, he never stated that he wants to get the state-of-the-art properties. It was just his friend offering him a favor.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see what more is going to be said this afternoon when the state capture inquiry resumes. By the way, thank you very much, Khayelihle Khumalo. By the way, just before the lunch break, in case you missed it, the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo announced that there will be a slight delay to resume at after 2 o'clock, and that he will be in touch with all the parties involved, of course, including Mr. Zizi Kodwa and the evidence leader during that time.